Chapter 26:15. Just like that, Lu Ming continued to advance and kill along the way. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. There was still no end to the passage after 3 months. There were 2 main reasons for this. Firstly, this passage was too long. The second reason was that Lu Ming was advancing very slowly. This was because he would encounter the lion-headed eagle beasts every once in a while. Naturally, he would be slowed down. There was even one time when Lu Ming encountered more than 10 lion-head eagle beasts appearing at the same time. Lu Ming was no match for them, and could only retreat against the wind. Luckily, these lion-head eagle beasts seemed to have their own territories. They stopped pursuing Lu Ming when he retreated to a certain area. Lu Ming continued to fight with the lion-head eagle beasts. Meanwhile, the Yuan Luo Hall master and the experts of the Yuan Luo Hall had finally broken the formation of the outermost door after 3 months. Crack! The door opened and the Yuan Luo Hall master and the others rushed in excitedly. They were imagining that there was a large amount of treasure waiting for them. However, it was like a basin of cold water had been poured over them. Nothing at all. They searched every nook and cranny, but it was empty. There was nothing there. The Yuan Luo Hall master's face darkened. They had also searched the passage that Lu Ming had entered previously, but that gap had been blocked by Qiu. They had only scanned it casually and did not discover it. Soon they arrived at the inner part, and were blocked by the second door. Hall master, there is another door here. Perhaps we are only at the outer part of the cave, so there are no treasures here. Perhaps we can find a fortuitous encounter through this door. Great Elder Mo Ken of the Yuan Luo Hall said. That's right, the treasures must be hidden inside. We will definitely find the treasures once we break this door. The others of the Yuan Luo Hall spoke one after another. The Yuan Luo Hall master's expression turned slightly better as he said, "All right, let's work together and break this door. I will not mistreat you all when we find the treasures." "Thank you, Hall master." The others expressed their gratitude and began to attack the door together. However, their expressions turned ugly as soon as they attacked. This was because the strength of the array formation on this door was much stronger than the first door. The first door had taken them several months to break open. This door would probably take even longer. But now that things had come to this, they had no choice but to grit their teeth and attack. In the air above the righteous Sky Army, the ancestor of techniques and Fu Heng were still playing chess. What they were playing was not a real game of chess. It was a game of cultivation base and intelligence. Every move was a contest between the two of them, and required a very long time. They were still playing chess with all their might. In the Hurricane Passage, Lu Ming was still moving forward slowly, fighting against the lion-head eagle-body beast. In this way, Lu Ming entered the Hurricane Passage. 8 months had passed. After 8 months of continuous fighting, Lu Ming had made great progress in all aspects. Lu Ming felt that his cultivation already reached the limits of a 5-star heavenly emperor, and could already break through. My cultivation has indeed improved very quickly by constantly killing and tempering myself here. Lu Ming sighed with emotion. If he cultivated step by step outside, even in a good environment like the Chaos Universe, Lu Ming would need at least 5 years to break through. This was still under the premise that he had Jingyu's portrait to study from time to time. But here, in less than a year, Lu Ming felt that he could break through. I have to find a better place to break through. Along the way, I also saw some pits, but I can break through in those pits. Lu Ming pondered. The walls here were bumpy and uneven, and there would often be some depressions. They were like shallow caves, and were very good hiding places. Lu Ming continued forward. After a few more battles, Lu Ming finally found a pit. Entering the pit, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged and circulated his cultivation to adjust his breathing. A few hours later, Lu Ming recovered to his peak state. Then he took out a pile of divine crystals and began to break through. This time the breakthrough came naturally. There was no difficulty at all. Several days later, Lu Ming successfully stepped into the 6-star Heavenly Emperor realm. The price was that he consumed a total of more than 10,000 divine crystals. Stepping into the 6-star Heavenly Emperor realm, Lu Ming's strength became a little stronger again. However, the further one went in the Void God realm, the greater the gap between each level. When he broke through in the Heavenly Emperor realm, it became more and more difficult to fight across levels. If he did not use the battle character tactic, Lu Ming could at most contend with a level 4 Void God realm powerhouse by relying on his Tao of Sovereign. Moreover, it was barely enough. After successfully breaking through, Lu Ming continued forward, fighting with the lion-headed eagle beast to temper himself. In a flash, 1 year and 3 months had already passed since Lu Ming entered the Hurricane Passageway. And at this time, Yuan Luo Hallmaster and the rest were still blocked by the second door, and did not break the array. Hallmaster not good. At this time, an expert from Yuan Luo Hall came in to report. What is it? Yuan Luo Hallmaster asked with a gloomy face. He was in a bad mood. He had been here for more than a year, but until now he had not obtained anything. If this went on, it would be troublesome when Fu Heng could not hold the ancestor of technique back. Hallmaster, the Walkabout sect leader has brought people here. The expert from Yuan Luo Hall reported. That old man Situ. Yuan Luo Hallmaster gritted his teeth. Brother Kong, you are too unkind. There is an expert's cave here, and you want to take it for yourself without informing me. At this time, a cold voice sounded and a group of people rushed in. The leader was a skinny middle-aged man. This person was the Walkabout sect leader, Situ Haonan. Brother Situ, you have misunderstood. There is a large array here. I originally wanted to break the array and inform you. Yuan Luo Hallmaster said with a fake smile. Break the array and inform me? Situ Haonan sneered. Brother Kong, no matter how you put it, we're still allies. We joined hands to deal with the righteous army, and my Walkabout sect helped you hold back quite a few of their experts. That's why you had the chance to occupy this immortal cave. So my Walkabout sect also wants a share of this immortal cave. Brother Kong, do you have any objections? How much do you want? Yuan Luo Hallmaster said. Half. The treasure's inside. We will each take half. Situ Haonan said. Half. Yuan Luo Hallmaster's face darkened and said, Brother Situ, your appetite is too big. Too big. Haha. Situ Haonan sneered and said. If I turn and leave now and attract Fa Ming, I'm afraid you won't even get half. Yuan Luo Hallmaster's face turned ugly. Everything was for benefits. Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect had only joined hands for benefits. Now that an expert's cave was in front of them, their relationship was no longer as friendly. He had no doubt that Situ Haonan would do anything if he refused. Chapter 26:16. The Yuan Luo Hallmaster squeezed out a smile and said, Brother Situ must be joking. Alright, half it is. However, the great formation here is very sturdy and difficult to break. Next, the experts of the Walkabout sect will have to attack together. Of course. Situ Haonan smiled. Immediately, the experts of the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect joined forces to attack the great formation. With the two of them working together, their speed increased greatly. It only took a month to break the great formation and open the door. Let's go. The experts from both sides rushed into the door, ready to plunder the treasures. But after entering, they were dumbfounded. It was clean and smooth, and there was nothing inside. They came to the place where Lu Ming took the pills. There were a few shelves here, but there was still nothing on the shelves. Completely empty? The Yuan Luo Hallmaster's face was gloomy. His chest heaved up and down, and he almost vomited blood. Could it be that this cave dwelling was empty, and the master of the cave dwelling did not leave anything behind? It should not be. This was the cave dwelling of a heavenly god. Logically speaking, even if such a figure left, he would take away some valuable treasures, but he would still leave behind some unimportant items. They were not important to heavenly gods, but to them, they might be priceless treasures. But how could there be nothing? Search carefully. The Yuan Luo Hallmaster roared. They searched inside and out, but they couldn't find a single strand of hair. Finally, they came to the depths of this area. There was a passage here blocked by an extremely powerful formation. There's more inside. Perhaps, the depths of the cave dwelling are inside? Perhaps, the treasures are inside? The Yuan Luo Hallmaster and the others could not help but have such thoughts to comfort themselves. Then they had no choice but to continue working hard and attack the great formation. However, The Great Formation here was even more astonishing. It was much stronger than the previous Great Formation. Even if the experts of the Walkabout sect joined forces, it would take a long time to break it open. Time passed quickly. It had already been 2 years since Lu Ming entered the Hurricane Passage. After continuous battles, Lu Ming improved very quickly. Unknowingly, his cultivation had reached the peak of a 6-star heavenly emperor. Lu Ming found another pit and began to break through to the next realm. In the end, he successfully broke through the realm, breaking through to 7-star heavenly emperor. Peak 7-star heavenly emperor, Lu Ming finally reached. The next step was to combine the 10,000 yuan into one and condense the divine flame. After condensing the divine flame, he would be able to break through to the martial god realm and enter the second step of cultivation. To the current Lu Ming, 10,000 elements returning to one and condensing divine fire was not particularly difficult. When Lu Ming arrived in the Your Wilds universe, his minor world had already fused with the Your Wilds universe, transforming it into pure world energy and sovereign power. Moreover, as Lu Ming's cultivation increased, the proportion of sovereign power in his body grew larger and larger. Currently, Lu Ming's sovereign power had reached 99%, and only 1% of his world energy remained. As long as he converted all the energy in his body into sovereign power, Lu Ming could start trying to combine all the origin powers and form the divine flame. This trip to the Immortals Cave helped Lu Ming save a lot of time. Continue. After the breakthrough, Lu Ming continued to move forward along the passage. Huff huff huff. Rumble rumble rumble. This time, Lu Ming continued to move forward. Not only did he hear the terrifying whistling of the wind, but he also heard deafening collisions. Lu Ming continued to move forward and discovered that he had finally reached the end of the passage. At the end of the passage, there were a few passages that merged and converged. Each passage was filled with strong winds. When the winds from a few passages collided with each other, a shocking explosion could be heard. On top of that, the winds from a few passages had gathered in a larger passage, causing the wind in the passage to be shockingly strong. Lu Ming had a feeling that if he entered the passage, he would not be able to hold on for long before his body was torn apart by the wind. It seems like I have to stop here. I'm afraid I won't be able to enter the depths of the Immortals Cave. Lu Ming pondered. There's a cave here? Suddenly, Lu Ming discovered a pitch-black cave on the side of the wall. Lu Ming climbed along the wall and looked into the cave. He discovered that the cave was pitch-black and bottomless. Lu Ming had not discovered a similar cave along the way. Where did this cave lead to? Lu Ming was extremely curious. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ming decided to take a look. Lu Ming circulated his sovereign power, and his eyes glowed. He could see the pitch-black cave with a single glance. Lu Ming entered the cave. There was no wind in the cave. Lu Ming carefully moved forward along the cave. After several thousand meters, he reached the end of the cave. Then, Lu Ming discovered that he had arrived on a large platform. The platform was extremely wide. On one side of the platform, the whistling of the wind could be heard. Lu Ming walked over to take a look. In the direction of the platform, there was a hurricane passage. The wind there was extremely terrifying. It was many times stronger than what Lu Ming had encountered before. Lu Ming's expression was grave. He did not dare to approach the hurricane passage. He stayed away from the hurricane passage and looked at the other parts of the platform. On the other side of the platform, there was a stone door. Lu Ming pushed the door open and entered. He discovered that it was a passage. There were rooms on both sides of the passage. Oh, could these be bedrooms? Lu Ming discovered that there were stone tables and stone beds in these rooms. However, they were very ordinary and did not contain any treasures. The next few rooms had ordinary stone tables and beds. There was nothing valuable about them. When Lu Ming came to the last room, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. There were some shelves in this room. On top of them were various weapons. Lu Ming's heart began to beat rapidly. He picked up a battle sword and inserted his sovereign power. Buzz. The battle sword began to glow. A powerful aura spread out. This is a rank 9 lower grade divine artifact. Lu Ming's breathing quickened. His eyes were burning. This was definitely a rank 9 lower grade divine artifact. One must know that the meteor spear that Lu Ming bought was only a rank 6 lower grade divine artifact. Even so, it was worth 7,000 divine crystals. A rank 9 lower grade divine artifact's price would be many times higher. It would be normal to sell it for 70,000 to 80,000 divine crystals, or even 100,000 divine crystals. There are words below. Lu Ming discovered that there was a small plaque hanging on the hilt of this sword. There were words written on it. Ancient Moon Sword, rank 9 lower grade divine artifact. On the plaque, there was a line of words. It really is a rank 9 lower grade divine artifact. Lu Ming laughed and quickly put it away. He then looked at the other weapons. Clear Wind Hook, rank 9 lower grade divine artifact. Lihi Saber, rank 8 lower grade divine artifact. Lu Ming looked at 6 or 7 weapons. They were all rank 7 lower grade divine artifacts and above. I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, Lu Ming muttered to himself. This time, he really struck it rich. Lu Ming did not expect that after passing through the Hurricane Passage, he would gain so much. 6 War Staff, rank 1 middle grade divine artifact. When Lu Ming picked up a long rod and took a look, his eyes lit up immediately. Chapter 26:17. There were even medial grade divine artifacts here. A middle grade divine artifact was equivalent to a true god expert. Only a true god expert could unleash the full power of a middle grade divine artifact. Lu Ming's eyes burned even brighter. He put away the staff and sped up his search. Medial grade divine artifacts, medial grade divine artifacts, medial grade divine artifacts. A moment later, Lu Ming put away all the weapons here. There were a total of 33 divine artifacts. All of them were low-grade divine artifacts or above. Any one of them was better than the meteor spear he was currently using. Among them, there were 20 low-grade divine artifacts. There were a total of 13 medial-grade divine artifacts. There were even 2 divine artifacts, the highest of which were mid-grade divine artifacts. One was a battle sword, and the other was a battle saber. How many divine crystals could a mid-grade divine artifact be sold for? Lu Ming couldn't estimate at all. Even factions like the Righteous Army, Yuan Luo Palace, and the Walkabout sect couldn't take out divine artifacts of this level. They were too precious. Lu Ming had no idea how many divine crystals these 33 divine artifacts were worth. In short, he knew that he had struck it rich. He wouldn't have to worry about resources for a period of time. His disciples, family, friends, and members of the Dragon Alliance wouldn't have to worry about resources either. I can exchange for the meteor spear now. Lu Ming was all smiles. There were several spears among the 33 divine artifacts. The highest grade was a mid-grade divine artifact of 4th grade. There was also a low-grade divine artifact of 8th grade and 9th grade. Lu Ming picked up a low-grade divine artifact and swung it a few times. He felt that it was quite good. After taking all the divine artifacts, Lu Ming wandered around a bit. After confirming that there were no more treasures here, Lu Ming left. Forward. With my cultivation, I can't go in. I can go back now. Lu Ming was satisfied. Then he went through the cave and returned to the Hurricane Passage. Then he followed the original path and climbed up the rocks to return. Going back was against the wind, so it was extremely difficult. However, Lu Ming had already killed all of the lion-headed eagle beasts in this Hurricane Passage. When he returned, there were no lion-headed eagle beasts blocking his way. Moreover, Lu Ming's cultivation had increased by another level, so his speed was still very fast. Even though they were traveling against the wind, their speed was still much faster than when they had arrived. After Lu Ming had crawled back for some time, the people from the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect finally opened the array formation of the passageway. They hurried through the passageway. At the end of this passage was the place where Lu Ming had obtained a large number of divine artifacts. After that, the hall master of the Yuan Luo Hall, Situ Haonan, and the others discovered that this place was still empty. Other than some stone stools and tables, there was nothing else. What happened? Yuan Luo Hall master roared. He could no longer control his temper. After a lot of hard work, he found that there was nothing here. If he knew that Lu Ming had already reached this place, he would probably vomit blood from anger. Everyone's expression was extremely ugly. Then, when they discovered the hurricane passage, their expressions became even uglier. The hurricane passage here was already the convergence of several passages. Its power was astonishing. Even the hallmaster of the Yuan Luo Hall was wary of it. This should be a blockade set up by the cave master. Could it be that the true inner cave is in the depths of these hurricane passages? They guessed. However, for a moment they were hesitant. Usually such a place would be accompanied by danger. Let's observe for a few days before making a decision, Yuan Luo Hall Master said. In the sky above the headquarters of the Zhengtian army, the ancestor of techniques and Fu Heng had been playing chess for more than 2 years. And now it was already the final moment. Break. The ancestor of techniques waved his hand, and a giant chess piece was formed and placed on the chessboard. Fu Heng's expression changed. With a wave of his hand, a powerful force surged towards the ancestor of techniques, preventing him from placing the chess piece. Boom. Boom. The two of them continued to exchange blows. In the past 2 years, the two of them had exchanged blows countless times. After a dozen moves, boom. In the end, the ancestor of technique's chess piece still landed on the chessboard. You've lost. The ancestor of techniques looked at Fu Heng. Brother Fa is indeed amazing. This old man is impressed. The game is over, and this old man has fulfilled his promise. Brother Fa, please don't blame me. Let's go. With a wave of his sleeve, Fu Heng soared into the sky and a starship appeared. He boarded the starship and left the Zhengtian planet. Northern Shang planet. As soon as Fu Heng left, the ancestor of techniques immediately went to the Northern Shang planet. After arriving at the Seven Stars Island, he immediately rushed to the Chun Gold Mine and met up with the Zhengtian army 100,000 miles away from the Chun Gold Island. The army lord is here. Army lord. The Zhengtian army immediately bowed to the ancestor of techniques. What's the situation in the Yuan Luo Hall these past 2 years? The ancestor of techniques asked. Army lord, the Yuan Luo Hall master, and the walkabout sect master have been in the cave abodes of the experts for the past 2 years. Someone reported. That old fox Situ Haonan is also here. A sharp light flashed through the ancestor of technique's eyes as he ordered. Wait for me here. I'll go check it out myself. Then the ancestor of techniques turned into a ray of light and shot towards Chen Jingquang. It's the Zhengtian army's army lord Fa Ming, informed the hall masters. As soon as the ancestor of techniques arrived, the Yuan Luo Hall and the walkabout sect immediately noticed him. Under the lead of a few true God Realm experts, they became cautious and sent a message to the Yuan Luo Hall master. The Yuan Luo Hall master and Situ Haonan received the message at the same time. Fa Ming dares to come alone? Fine, we'll make him stay today. A cold light flashed through the Yuan Luo Hall master's eyes. After spending a few years and not getting anything, he was filled with anger. Fine. After we get rid of Fa Ming, we'll split the Zhengtian army's territory, Situ Haonan said coldly. Old Mo, hide in the dark. Fa Ming might think that you're still guarding the headquarters. Later, Brother Situ and I will fight with Fa Ming. Then you sneak attack Fa Ming, the Yuan Luo Hall master ordered. The Yuan Luo Hall master was wary of the ancestor of techniques. He and Mo Kim were both at the 4th level True God realm, while the ancestor of techniques was only at the 3rd level True God realm. However, the ancestor of techniques was extremely strong. He could fight against the two of them alone. Even with Situ Haonan, they weren't confident that they could make the ancestor of techniques stay in a direct battle. If the ancestor of techniques wanted to leave, they couldn't stop him. Only a sneak attack could make the ancestor of techniques stay. Don't worry. The Grand Elder of the Walkabout sect is also hiding near Chen Jingquang's vein. He can also sneak attack when the time comes. Today we must make Fa Ming stay, Situ Haonan said coldly. The Yuan Luo Hall master's heart trembled as he secretly called Situ Haonan an old fox. Situ Haonan had asked the Grand Elder of the Walkabout sect to hide in the dark. It was most likely to guard against the Yuan Luo Hall. Fine. Today, we'll make sure that Fa Ming doesn't return, the Yuan Luo Hall master said coldly. The group of people headed outside. Chapter 26:18. Outside the cave, the ancestor of technique stood in the air, his body emitting a vast divine aura. Set up the formation. The experts of Yuan Luo and the free and unfettered sect guarding the cave all had solemn expressions as they retreated and set up a great formation. The ancestor of technique was too famous. A person who had walked out of a lesser thousand world under the jurisdiction of Yuan Luo Palace had broken free from Yuan Luo's shackles and risen to power, establishing the righteous army to fight against Yuan Luo Palace. Most importantly, the ancestor of technique's strength was incomparably powerful. He had fought against 2 experts of Yuan Luo Palace alone and established a great reputation for himself. Although there was a level 3 true god from Yuan Luo Palace present who had the same cultivation as the ancestor of technique, his face was pale and his heart trembled when facing the ancestor of technique. He had once seen the ancestor of technique kill a level 3 true god expert with one move. He didn't have the slightest bit of courage when facing the ancestor of technique. "Kong Ji, get out here!" The ancestor of technique shouted coldly, his voice rumbling and causing many people with weaker cultivation to retreat. "Fa Ming, do you only know how to be arrogant in front of my subordinates?" The voice of Yuan Luo Palace Master, Kong Ji, came from within the cave, following which, more than 10 silhouettes rushed out of the cavern. It was Kong Ji, Situ Haonan and the others. Of course, the supreme elder of Yuan Luo Palace, Missouri Kan, didn't appear. Kong Ji's gaze swept across and found that only Fa Ming was present. The coldness in his eyes intensified. "Kong Ji, Chen Jindao originally belonged to the righteous army. Now you can scram," the ancestor of technique said. "Ha ha ha, what a joke, what a joke." Kong Ji laughed and looked mockingly at the ancestor of technique. "Fa Ming, you're really naive. You've been in the Chaotic Star River for so many years, haven't you understood one thing? In the Chaotic Star River, whoever is stronger will be able to occupy more territory. From today onwards, this island, no, the entire northern Shang planet will belong to Yuan Luo Palace and the free and unfettered sect. Do you understand? If that's the case, then let's talk with strength." The ancestor of technique was very direct. He stepped forward and a vast divine power erupted like a tide. Boom. The ancestor of techniques pressed down with his palm. Divine power boiled as a gigantic palm print slammed down on Kong Ji. Kong Ji didn't dare to be careless. His LV4 True God Realm divine power exploded. A saber appeared in his hand. A saber light shot up into the sky and slashed at the ancestor of technique's palm print. Boom. Energy surged into the sky as divine powers collided, creating shockwaves that spread out in all directions. "Not good, block it." The True God Realm experts of the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sects set up defenses in front of them to block the shockwaves, but they were still pushed back by the shockwaves. Those with weaker cultivations directly coughed up blood, their faces pale. If there were true divinity powerhouses defending them, those with weaker cultivations would most likely be killed by the shockwaves. There was a huge gap between Empty God Realm and True God Realm. At the same time, the saber light and palm print dissipated, and a figure retreated continuously. The person who retreated was Kong Ji. His cultivation was clearly at the 4th level True God Realm, one level higher than the ancestor of techniques. But in a head-on battle, he was at a disadvantage. "Kong Ji, your battle strength is not enough." The ancestor of technique spoke coldly. He manipulated his divine power and slammed down again. "Scorching Sun Saber Technique," Kong Ji shouted. His 4th level middle divine artifact saber radiated a dazzling saber light that was as dazzling as the sun. Then he slashed out with his saber, and the blazing saber light slashed at the ancestor of technique's palm print. Kong Ji had used a divine skill. "Fa Ming, take this." The sect leader of the Walkabout sect, Situ Haonan, also attacked. His body moved like a flickering shadow as he charged at the ancestor of technique. At the same time, a soft sword appeared in his hand. The sword light was like a poisonous snake as it stabbed at the ancestor of technique's vitals. At the same time, this was also a terrifying divine skill. Kong Ji and Situ Haonan had both used their divine skills. The ancestor of technique's face finally turned serious. A 2-meter-long battle sword appeared in his hand. Swoosh. The ancestor of technique slashed out with his sword and the sword light exploded. Boom. Boom. There were two loud explosions as the ancestor of technique blocked Kang Ji and Situ Haonan's attacks. Fa Ming, since you dared to come here alone today, you shall stay here forever. Kang Ji continued to channel his divine power and unleashed his divine skill to the maximum. Its power was extremely terrifying as he attacked head-on. At the same time, Situ Haonan's body flickered as he moved around at an extremely fast speed. He took the opportunity to attack the ancestor of technique's vitals. The two of them worked together, and their power increased exponentially. The ancestor of technique focused his attention and fought 1 against 2. It was difficult to tell who would win. The three of them fought on the surface of the sea, stirring up huge waves. Then they fought in the air. In the blink of an eye, the three of them had exchanged more than 100 blows and it was difficult to tell who would win. Then, the three of them fought on the surface of the sea. Whoosh! Suddenly, the surface of the sea rolled, and a terrifying light of destruction burst out from the surface of the sea and attacked the ancestor of technique. Mo Kan. The ancestor of technique shouted angrily. Haha, Fa Ming die. Kang Ji laughed loudly and launched a violent attack. Situ Haonan also attacked with all his might and cooperated with Mo Kan's sneak attack. Just as the ancestor of technique was about to be hit, the sword light on his body suddenly exploded. Rays of sword light burst out and filled the sky. Boom. 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 Kang Ji, Situ Haonan, and Mo Kan's attacks were all blocked by the sword light that filled the sky. Swoosh. Swoosh. Kang Ji, Situ Haonan, and Mo Kan quickly retreated. They stood in the air and looked at the ancestor of technique in shock. Fa Ming, you've cultivated your divine skill to the 3rd level? Kang Ji roared in shock. A divine skill was an offensive skill of the martial god realm. It could unleash the power of one's divine force to the extreme and burst out with terrifying power. It was the same as a martial skill. According to the difference in power and degree of mystery, divine skills were divided into different grades. However, the division of divine skills was related to the degree of mystery. For example, if a divine skill only had 1 level, even if it was cultivated to the peak, it would only have 1 level. That would be the 1st level of the divine skill. Some divine skills, when cultivated to the peak, had 2 levels. That would be the 2nd level of the divine skill. 2 levels of the divine skill would naturally be stronger and more terrifying than a single level of the divine skill. Some divine skills, when cultivated to the peak, had 3 levels. That would be the 3rd level of the divine skill. The more levels a divine skill had, the greater its potential and the higher its value. Of course, the cultivation of a divine skill was very profound and complicated. Even if you had it, you might not be able to cultivate it to the highest level. For example, if a person's talent was limited and he had 3 levels of the divine skill, but he could only cultivate it to the 1st level, then its power would be no different from a single level of the divine skill. The more profound it was, the more levels it had. There were 4 levels, 5 levels, 6 levels, and even 9 levels and 10 levels. If one wanted to cultivate a divine skill, the minimum requirement was to reach the peak of the empty god realm. This was because using a divine skill would consume a lot of divine force. Without a strong divine force, one would not be able to support it. Kang Ji and Situ Haonan both had 3 levels of the divine skill, but they had only cultivated it to the 2nd level. The ancestor of technique also had 3 levels of the divine skill, but he had already cultivated it to the 3rd level. Chapter 26:19. One had to know that the ancestor of technique was only a level 3 true god, but he had already cultivated a divine skill to the 3rd level. This level of comprehension was simply terrifying. I must kill him. Kang Ji roared in his heart. The ancestor of technique was already so terrifying. If he broke through to the level 4 true god realm, it would be even more terrifying. So what if you've cultivated a divine skill to the 3rd level? You're still going to die today. Kang Ji roared and charged towards the ancestor of technique. At the same time, Situ Haonan and Mo Kan also charged towards the ancestor of technique. Each of them unleashed the full power of their divine skills. Sword breaking technique. The ancestor of technique's battle sword stabbed out continuously. More than a dozen sword lights pierced towards Kangji, Situ Haonan, and Mo Kansas. This was the ancestor of technique's divine skill. It had already been cultivated to the 3rd level, and was extremely powerful. It constantly clashed with Kangji and the others' attacks. In the air, the ancestor of technique's figure retreated rapidly. However, he still managed to block Kangji and the others' attacks. He was only at a slight disadvantage. Kill. Kangji was extremely shocked. With the strength of the 3 of them, they were actually unable to take down the ancestor of techniques. Didn't that mean that without Situ Haonan, he and Mo Kim were no match for the ancestor of techniques? He must kill the ancestor of technique, or he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. Situ Haonan also had the same thought. The walkabout sect's strength was similar to the Yuan Luo palaces. The 3 of them charged towards the ancestor of technique again. The 2 sides were locked in a fierce battle. Force him closer to the island. In the midst of the battle, Situ Haonan sent a message to Kangji and Mo Kansas. Kangji's eyes flashed with a trace of ferocity. Violent attacks continuously blasted out, gradually forcing the ancestor of technique towards Chenjin Island. On Chenjin Island, the people of Yuan Luo Palace and the walkabout sect had all retreated far away. They didn't dare to stay there. Slowly, their battlefield moved to Chenjin Island. Whoosh! Suddenly, a sword light burst out from a secret place on Chenjin Island. The sword light was bright and sharp. Its power was extremely terrifying and not any weaker than Situ Haonan's. The ancestor of technique, revealed a shocked expression. He knew that he had been ambushed. There was even an expert on the other side. Needless to say, he knew this was a 4th stage True God Realm Grand Elder of the Walkabout sect. The ancestor of technique tried his best to dodge, but Kangji and the other 2 launched a fierce attack, making it difficult for the ancestor of technique to dodge. Puff! In the end, the ancestor of technique didn't manage to dodge it completely. A streak of sword light slashed across his chest, almost cutting him in half. Scram! The ancestor of techniques roared furiously. At that instant, over 100 sword glows were fired, forcing Kangji and the others to back away. With a flash, Kangji and the other 3 surrounded the ancestor of techniques. Very good. I didn't expect that the strongest of both of your forces would be here. The ancestor of technique's face was somewhat pale. Although he managed to avoid being hit in his vitals, he still suffered some injuries and his strength weakened a little. Fa Ming, your fate is sealed today. You're just an ant from a minor kiliacosm. It's impossible for you to defy the heavens. Kangji said coldly. Ha ha ha, so what if it's a minor 1,000 world? Could it be that you are noble just because you were born in the primordial world? How laughable. If it's a one-on-one battle, all of you are nothing but clay chickens and pottery dogs. The ancestor of technique coldly snickered and his face was full of disdain. The faces of Kangji and the other 3 darkened. Indeed, if it was a one-on-one battle, none of them would be a match for the ancestor of techniques. Even though their cultivations were much higher than theirs. You only know how to talk. The winner takes all. Fa Ming, I'll send you on your way. Kangji didn't waste any more words and charged towards the ancestor of techniques. At the same time, Situ Haonan and the other 2 also launched their attacks. Before, the ancestor of techniques was slightly weaker than the 3 of them. Now that he was injured, he was even weaker against the 4 of them. As soon as they started to exchange blows, he was at a disadvantage. The Righteous Sky Army Lord is finished. In the future, the Righteous Sky Army's territory will belong to our 2 forces. Not far away, the people of the Yuan Luo Palace and the Walkabout sect thought excitedly. Boom! Boom! The ancestor of techniques and the other 4 clashed fiercely. The ancestor of techniques was at a disadvantage and could only block with all his strength. Bam! After a few dozen exchanges, the ancestor of technique's body was sent flying and heavily smashed into the Chun Gold Island. Boom! Dust filled the air, and the Chun Gold ores flew everywhere. A giant hole appeared on the island. At this moment, Lu Ming had already passed through the hurricane tunnel and returned to the Chun Gold mine. He followed the tunnel that Qiu had dug out and headed out of the Chun Gold Island. Boom! 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 He had only walked halfway when a violent explosion came from above. Then he felt the entire island shake. Then, a terrifying force rushed towards him along the vein above. Not good. Lu Ming retreated quickly. The Chun gold mine in this area kept exploding and Lu Ming was sent flying by the force. The ancestor of techniques lay in the deep hole on the island and spat out blood. This attack had worsened his injuries. Whoosh! The ancestor of techniques barely stabilized his injuries and charged out of the deep hole. Kong Ji and the other three's auras locked onto the ancestor of techniques and trapped him in the middle. Suddenly, Kong Ji and the others were stunned because they felt the aura of life in a pile of rocks. Bam! Then the pile of rocks exploded and a figure charged out. This figure was naturally Lu Ming. Qiu, what's going on? Lu Ming was speechless. He had also encountered an unexpected disaster after passing through the Chun gold mine. When he glanced at Kong Ji and the others, his heart skipped a beat. Kong Ji and the others' auras were too terrifying. To Lu Ming, they were unfathomable. Lu Ming, why are you here? At this moment, the ancestor of techniques also saw Lu Ming and was shocked. He flashed and appeared beside Lu Ming. Ancestor of techniques. Seeing the ancestor of techniques, Lu Ming was overjoyed. So it's an ant from the Zhengtian army. Fa Ming, it's your fortune to have a brat die with you. Kong Ji said coldly as the ferocity in his eyes grew stronger. Kong Ji, master of the Yuan Luo Palace. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat as thoughts flashed through his mind. He roughly knew what had happened. The ancestor of techniques was surrounded. Don't worry, Fa Ming. After you die, I'll send the people of the Zhengtian army down to accompany you. Situ Haonan also said coldly. The four of them gradually approached the ancestor of techniques and prepared to launch a thunderous attack to kill the ancestor of techniques. Senior, this battle sword is for you. At this moment, Lu Ming took out a battle sword and handed it to the ancestor of techniques. This combat sword was one of the two middle-grade 7th-level divine weapons that Lu Ming had obtained from the cave abode. Seeing this battle sword, the ancestor of techniques immediately widened his eyes in shock. However, without hesitation, he took it and spat a mouthful of blood onto the battle sword. He didn't have time to refine it now, but by using his blood as a sacrifice, he could temporarily unleash the power of the battle sword and control it freely. Buzz! The battle sword vibrated, and a sword chi shot into the sky. Chapter 26-20. That's a medial level 7 sacred artifact. Kong Ji, Situ Haonan and Mo Kan, and the others widened their eyes in shock. At the same time, there was deep greed in their eyes. Kill! The ancestor of technique roared, and displayed the sword-breaking technique. Sword light shone brightly and pillars of sword light shot towards Kong Ji and the others. Attack! Kong Ji and the others attacked as well. 4 terrifying attacks attacked the ancestor of technique. Boom! Boom! There was a violent explosion, and the ancestor of technique took a few steps back. However, Kong Ji and the others' attacks were all blocked by the ancestor of technique. He was only at a slight disadvantage. It's really a medial level 7 sacred artifact. Damn it, how did that kid get a medial level 7 sacred artifact? This kid must have had a fortuitous encounter. Kong Ji, Situ Haonan, and the others roared. However, they did not suspect that Lu Ming had obtained the sacred artifact from the cave dwelling. That was because the cave dwelling's door was too difficult to break open. There were so many of them, and they needed to spend a lot of time to break it open. How could a mere Lu Ming break it open? Moreover, they had searched the cave dwelling and there were no other entrances. They only thought that Lu Ming had obtained the sacred artifact from somewhere else. Lu Ming, follow me closely, the ancestor of technique said. Lu Ming nodded and followed closely behind the ancestor of technique. Let's see who can stop me. The ancestor of technique's long hair fluttered in the wind. His sword chi was wild as he charged towards Kong Ji's direction. Stop him! Kong Ji roared and charged towards the ancestor of technique. Situ Haonan and the others also attacked. However, the ancestor of technique controlled the medial level 7 sacred artifact, and his combat strength increased tremendously. He was no longer afraid of Kong Ji and the others. Both sides continued to attack and exchanged dozens of blows in an instant. However, the ancestor of technique was only at a slight disadvantage. Bam! In the end, the ancestor of technique forced Kang Ji to retreat and brought Lu Ming out of the encirclement. I won't keep you company today. If you want to fight, we'll fight another day. The ancestor of technique brought Lu Ming and flew into the distance. His voice came from afar. Damn it! Damn it! Kang Ji roared furiously, his face full of malevolence. Today was such a good opportunity. Yet the ancestor of techniques ran away. Plus, the ancestor of technique had acquired a 7th level mid-quality weapon. His battling abilities had greatly increased. This was extremely disadvantageous for them. What should we do? Situ Haonan's face turned ugly. They didn't give chase. They knew that even if they caught up, they wouldn't be able to kill the ancestor of techniques. If the ancestor of techniques fought with his life on the line, even if they managed to kill him, at least 2 of them would die. None of them wanted to die. Alliance. We must form an alliance. A true alliance. Otherwise, the ancestor of techniques will destroy us one by one. Kang Ji gritted his teeth. All right. Situ Haonan immediately nodded. Right now, none of them were a match for the ancestor of techniques. They had to join hands and support each other. Only then would they be able to fight against the ancestor of techniques. Also, we have to break into this cave as soon as possible. Once we get the treasures inside, we won't have to fear the ancestor of techniques anymore. Kang Ji said. That's right. Attack now. Situ Haonan said. With that, they immediately returned to the cave abode. They planned to take the risk and try to enter the hurricane passage. The ancestor of techniques brought Lu Ming and flew tens of thousands of miles away in the blink of an eye before stopping. Poof! The ancestor of techniques spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned paler. Senior, are you all right? Lu Ming was a little worried. I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while. Kang Ji and the others shouldn't dare to chase after us. Let's rest again. Saying that, the ancestor of techniques took out a healing elixir and swallowed it. He began to heal his injuries. The ancestor of techniques' injuries weren't too serious. Not long after, his complexion improved a lot. Lu Ming, it's all thanks to you this time. Here, I'll return this divine weapon to you. The ancestor of techniques smiled and took out the 7th level mid-quality divine weapon and handed it to Lu Ming. Senior, you can keep this divine artifact for now. Lu Ming smiled and didn't take it. How can I do that? A 7th level mid-quality divine weapon is too precious. How can I accept it? The ancestor of techniques shook his head. Even he, Kang Ji, Situ Haonan, and the others didn't have a 7th level mid-quality divine weapon. The ones they used before were all 4th level mid-quality divine weapons. Senior, just take it that I'm lending it to you. I can't use this divine weapon even if I keep it. Only you can fight against Kang Ji and the others with it. Lu Ming said. Now that the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect had joined forces, the righteous army was alone, and without reinforcements. If the ancestor of techniques didn't have a 7th level mid-quality divine weapon, he probably wouldn't be their match. Only with this divine weapon could he fight against them and make them fear him. Alright, then I'll keep it for now. I'll return it to you when your cultivation increases. The ancestor of techniques pondered for a moment and didn't refuse. He also understood that Lu Ming was right. If he didn't have a 7th level mid-quality divine weapon, he really wouldn't be their match if Kang Ji and Situ Haonan joined forces. Putting away his battle sword, the ancestor of techniques brought Lu Ming to meet up with the rest of the righteous army. Ancestor of techniques, how's the situation? Should we kill our way over? We can't let the Yuan Luo Hall take over that expert's cave dwelling. The members of the righteous army said one by one. It's fine. How can the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect take over this expert's cave dwelling? Let's return to the righteous army first, and spread the news that there's an expert's cave dwelling here. The ancestor of techniques said. General is wise. Since we can't have it, they can't have it for themselves either. Ha ha ha. The righteous army laughed. Then, they returned to Seven Stars Island and returned to the righteous army through the island's transportation formation. Then they began to spread the news. Soon, the news of a heavenly god's cave dwelling on the northern Shang planet spread like a hurricane through the chaotic astral river, and into the ears of various factions. What? A heavenly god's cave dwelling? A heavenly god's cave dwelling is extremely rare in the chaotic astral river. We can't miss it. Looks like I'll have to make a trip there myself. In the chaotic star river, all the big and small forces were alarmed. Various experts hurried to the northern Shang planet. A heavenly god was a supreme existence in the chaotic astral river. Their divine might shook the boundless starry sky. Currently, only the Cloud Peak Pavilion had a heavenly god overseeing it in the chaotic astral river. A heavenly god's cave dwelling was too attractive to the true immortal experts of various factions. Not long after, experts arrived at the Chun Jinghuang vein on the northern Shang planet. They were all true immortals, and most of them were at the 4th level of the true immortal realm or above. Damn it, damn that Fa Ming, damn the righteous army. Kong Ji roared furiously. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. With so many experts descending, how could they have a share? They could only follow the crowd. Even if there were treasures inside, they might not even be able to drink the soup. Any random faction here wouldn't be weaker than the Yuan Luo Hall. Kong Ji really wanted to vomit blood. After discovering this heavenly god's cave dwelling, he hadn't gotten a single thing. Chapter 26-21. One by one, experts began to barge into the cave. However, the wind tunnel at the back was extremely dangerous. Some people barged in and found that the deeper they went, the more wind tunnels there were. Wind tunnels crisscrossed, and the further they went, the stronger the wind tunnels became. Even high-level True God Realm experts couldn't barge in. Later, the Cloud Peak Pavilion's Pavilion Master personally took action. This was a heavenly God Realm expert. He barged into the depths of the cave, and reportedly obtained some treasures. As for what he obtained, no one knew. After the Cloud Peak Pavilion Master barged into the depths of the cave, and took away the treasures, this matter came to an end. In the end, the Yuan Luo Palace and Walkabout sect didn't obtain anything. Kong Ji and Situ Haonan were infuriated, wishing they could kill the ancestor of technique and annihilate the righteous army. But in the end, they didn't dare to act rashly. They were actively looking for allies, hoping to find more allies to annihilate the righteous army. Of course, the ancestor of technique wasn't idle either. He was also looking for allies to resist the Yuan Luo Palace and Walkabout sect. Regarding this, Lu Ming couldn't help much. He could only focus on cultivating. In the Heavenly God's Cave's wind tunnel, Lu Ming's cultivation rose by 2 levels, reaching 7-star Heavenly Emperor realm. Next, he only needed to strengthen his foundation and advance towards the 10,000 Origin Unification realm. At the same time, after fighting with the lion-headed eagle beast for 2 years, Lu Ming's comprehension of the battle character formula had reached a peak. Now he could double his battle strength at any time. 100% success rate. However, the battle character in his sea of consciousness was unfathomable and mysterious. Lu Ming understood that he was far from comprehending it. Right now, he had only scratched the surface. If he continued to comprehend it, Lu Ming felt that he could triple his battle strength. However, it wasn't that easy to triple his battle strength. Lu Ming had reached a bottleneck and needed time to comprehend it. In the blink of an eye, 3 years passed. After 3 years of cultivation, although Lu Ming had yet to step into the demigod realm, he felt that he was getting closer and closer to the demigod realm. On this day, a piece of news spread through the chaotic astral river, causing a huge commotion. All the factions, big and small, went crazy. On this day, Lu Ming was cultivating when he received a message from the Ancestor of Techniques. The Ancestor of Techniques had something important to discuss with him. Is there something important? Lu Ming felt quite confused, and went to a large hall in the Righteous Army. He found that there were already 5 or 6 people waiting here. 5 or 6 of them were not very old. They should not have cultivated for more than 10,000 years. They were all part of the younger generation. Tong Xie was among them. Lu Ming. Tong Xie greeted Lu Ming with a smile. The others also nodded at Lu Ming. Lu Ming nodded in response, and then he gazed at Tong Shi-er and said, Miss Shi-er, may I know why the general has summoned us? I don't know either. Tong Shi-er shook her head. The others also had puzzled looks on their faces. You are all here. At this moment, the ancestor of techniques walked in from outside the palace. General. Everyone bowed. No need to be so polite. The ancestor of techniques waved his hand and said, You must be very curious why I called you here in such a hurry, right? Lu Ming and the others nodded. You should know that our chaotic galaxy belongs to the Qin Tian starfield, right? The ancestor of techniques said. Lu Ming and the others nodded again. At the same time, they felt a little strange. Could this matter be related to the Qin Tian starfield? The chaotic galaxy had hundreds of large and small factions, countless planets, and incomparably vast territories. However, compared to the Qin Tian starfield, it could not be compared. The Qin heavenly starfield contained many galaxies. There were at least a few hundred of them. The chaotic galaxy was only one of the many galaxies in the Qin Tian starfield. Moreover, it was the worst and most backward galaxy. The number of experts was also the least. What did the ancestor of techniques summon them here have to do with the Qin Tian starfield? The Qin Tian starfield's territory is too vast. There are hundreds of galaxies, and there are many races living there. There are countless experts. However, among the countless factions, other than a few terrifying races, the strongest faction is the 13 sects. The 13 sects of the Qin Tian starfield. Tong Shi-er and a few other youths exclaimed in unison. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He had read about it in the ancient records. The 13 sects of the Qin Tian starfield were 13 extremely powerful, ancient, and terrifying sections. It could be said that in the vast Qin Tian starfield, other than a few terrifying races, the 13 sects stood at the peak. These 13 sects were divided into 3 overlords and the top 10 sections. Without a doubt, the 3 overlords were the strongest, followed by the top 10 sections. These 13 sects occupied half of the Qin Tian starfield's territory and countless planets. They had dominated the Qin Tian starfield for countless years. Factions like the Zhengtian army, Yuan Luo Palace, and the Walkabout sect were ants in front of the 13 sects. Even the strongest faction in the chaotic galaxy, the Yinfeng Pavilion, was no different from an ant in front of the 13 sects. To the people of the chaotic galaxy, the 13 sects were just a legend. They had only read about them in the ancient records. That's right. Every 1,000 years, the 13 sects of the Qin heavenly star field will recruit a batch of disciples from all over the Qin heavenly star field. Now 1,000 years have passed. The ancestor of technique said. He paused here. The 13 sects of Qin Tian are recruiting disciples. Tong Shi-er and the others' breathing became heavy, but they were also puzzled. General, I've read the records. The 13 sects of Qin Tian will recruit a batch of disciples every 1,000 years, but they have never recruited disciples from the chaotic galaxy. What does this have to do with us? Tong Shi-er asked. The chaotic galaxy was the most backward and desolate of the many galaxies in the Qin Tian starfield. It was the weakest galaxy. Every race, every force, those who couldn't survive, or those who committed crimes, all ran to the chaotic star river. Therefore, the chaotic galaxy was a chaotic place where good and bad people mixed together. It had always been looked down upon by other galaxies. The 13 sects of the Qin Tian starfield had never recruited disciples from the chaotic galaxy. Therefore, Tong Shi-er and the others were puzzled. It's different this time. The 13 sects of Qin Tian announced to the world that they will be recruiting disciples from the entire Qin Tian starfield soon, including the chaotic galaxy. The ancestor of technique said. That's right. The chaotic galaxy will be recruiting disciples. Tong Shi-er and the other youths breathed heavily, their eyes burning with passion. They were all excited. The Qin heavenly 13 sects had actually opened their doors to the chaotic star river for the first time. If one could join any of the Qin heavenly 13 sects, it would be a heaven-defying opportunity. In the future, one's cultivation would definitely soar to the skies, becoming a person above all others. The heavenly god realm was the synonym of invincibility in the chaotic galaxy. However, in the 13 sects of Qin Tian, Heavenly gods weren't anything special. There were many divine king realm existences in the 13 sects of Qin Tian. Chapter 26-22. Such a powerful force naturally had an unimaginable amount of resources. Their cultivation conditions and environment were simply incomparable to the chaotic Star River. Moreover, if they were chosen by a heavenly god or even a divine king, they would have a bright future ahead of them. Therefore, this time, I've summoned all of you to participate in the Qin Tian 13 sects disciple recruitment. However, it's not that easy to join the Qin Tian 13 sects. You'll have to go through layers and layers of screening. It's extremely difficult. The ancestor of technique said. His eyes were filled with anticipation. As long as someone from the righteous army joined the Qin Tian 13 sects and became a disciple of the Qin Tian 13 sects, the righteous army's status in the chaotic astral river would soar. At that time, who knew how many powers would try to curry favor with them? At that time, it would be easy to destroy the Yuan Luo Palace and the Freedom Sect. We'll do our best to join the Qin Tian 13 sects. Tongxi, and the others said loudly with determination in their eyes. They understood that this was a great opportunity for them. They had to make good use of it. All right, go back and prepare. We'll meet here 10 days later. I'll bring all of you to Yinfeng City. The first round of screening will be held there. All right, Lu Ming, you stay here first. The ancestor of techniques looked at Lu Ming after he finished speaking. Tongxi, and the others left while Lu Ming stayed behind. Lu Ming was puzzled. Why did the ancestor of techniques ask him to stay? Lu Ming, the Qin Tian 13 sects only look at talent and not cultivation base when recruiting disciples. Therefore, with your talent, you'll definitely be chosen by the Qin Tian 13 sects. The ancestor of techniques said. Lu Ming had mastered the sovereign Tao. With such talent, he would definitely be chosen. Lu Ming, which sect do you want to join? The ancestor of techniques asked. I haven't decided yet. I don't know much about the Qin Tian 13 sects. We'll see later, Lu Ming said. Lu Ming, I have a request. The ancestor of techniques pondered for a moment and suddenly sighed. Senior, please speak your mind. Lu Ming said. I would like to invite you to join a sect. After the ancestor of techniques finished speaking, he paused for a moment before continuing. Among the Qin 13 sects, the strongest are the 3 overlords. The Mystic Academy, the Invincible Kenzo, and the Immeasurable Sacred Ground. However, the sect I want you to join is not one of the 3 overlords, but one of the top 10 sects, the Kongxian School. Kongxian School. Lu Ming was somewhat puzzled. You must be very puzzled as to why I let you join the 3 overlord forces. I have some selfish motives here. Back then, I had some interactions with Kongxian School. Speaking up to this point, the ancestor of techniques recounted what had happened between him and the Kongxian School. It turned out that after the ancestor of techniques had escaped from the Yuan Luo Palace, he had been traveling and tempering himself in the vast universe. He had once left the chaotic galaxy and headed to other galaxies. During this process, he met a woman and fell in love with her. However, this woman was a genius of the Kongxian School. Her father was also an important figure in the Kongxian School. Her status was much higher than that of the ancestor of techniques. Naturally, the woman's father was strongly against the two of them being together. He even forcefully brought the woman back to the Kongxian School. He had once said that as long as the ancestor of techniques could not break through to the heavenly god realm, he would not allow the two of them to meet. With my talent, I'm afraid that it will be difficult for me to reach the heavenly god realm in this lifetime. Therefore, I have some selfish motives. I want you to join the Kongxian School. Speaking up to this point, the ancestor of techniques took out an exquisite dagger and said, If you join the Kongxian School, if you have the chance, return this dagger to her. Oh right, her name is Yuexin. Return it to her and tell her that I have let her down. However, this is my selfishness. If you don't want to join the Kongxian School, I won't force you. The ancestor of techniques sighed. His eyes were filled with nostalgia and helplessness. Senior, I agree. Lu Ming smiled and took the dagger from the ancestor of techniques' hand. The ancestor of techniques incident reminded him of the incident between him and Xian Yanqing. In the divine wilderness continent, he and Xian Yanqing had gone through many trials and tribulations before they were together. It was somewhat similar to the ancestor of techniques incident. Moreover, Lu Ming did not really care about which sect he joined. He had Jingyu's inheritance, but he still had not broken the seal on Jingyu's portrait. Once the seal was broken, Lu Ming believed that he would definitely gain something. Moreover, he still had the battle formula to learn. The main reason he joined a sect was to obtain resources. All sorts of resources that would help his cultivation. Moreover, there was another reason. Although the Kongxian school was one of the top 10 sects, it was ranked first among the top 10 sects. In this aspect, it was not much weaker than the three overlords. Lu Ming, thank you. The ancestor of techniques cupped his fists solemnly. Senior, you're too kind. Lu Ming quickly helped the ancestor of techniques up and said, Senior, I have some friends. Can they join the Qin Tian 13 sects recruitment? He thought of Xian Yanqing, Xian Yanjuan, and Dandan. Of course. Those who have not cultivated for 10,000 years can join. I remember that your wife is extremely talented. Originally, I wanted to ask you to bring her along. However, if you want to join the selection, you have to be at least level 1 empty god realm. However, your combat strength is extremely powerful, and you don't have to meet this condition. The ancestor of techniques said. Do I need to be at level 1 empty god realm? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Originally, he wanted to ask Bubbles, his disciples Xiang Xiang, Ouyang Moli, and the others. However, it seemed that only Xian Yanqing, Xian Yanjuan, and Dandan met the conditions. Immediately, Lu Ming bid farewell to the ancestor of techniques and returned to his residence. After returning to his residence, Lu Ming looked for Xian Yanqing, Xian Yanjuan, and Dandan and told them about the Qin Tian 13 sects recruitment. Dandan immediately raised both his hands in agreement. Xian Yanqing naturally wanted to go wherever Lu Ming went. I agree. Xian Yanjuan did not hesitate and agreed immediately. To Xian Yanjuan, she did not care about the God realm or the Supreme Being. She also did not care about the divine skill or the divine skill. What she cared about was the cultivation resources and the excellent cultivation environment of the powerful forces that would allow her strength to increase tremendously. During this period of time, all the forces in the chaotic galaxy were excited. They gathered all the young experts who met the conditions to join the Qin Tian 13 sects recruitment. In a hall in the Yuan Luo Palace, 8 young men were lined up in a row. Kong Long was among them. At the front was the Yuan Luo Palace master, Kong Ji. This time, all of you must do your best. At least, one of you must join the Qin Tian 13 sects. Even if it is the weakest sect among the 13 sects, the Yuan Luo Palace's prestige in the chaotic galaxy will increase greatly. At that time, we will not be afraid of the Yinfeng Pavilion. Do you understand? Kong Ji said loudly. Yes, we will do our best. Kong Long and the others said loudly. Chapter 26-23. The Walkabout Sect's sect master, Situ Haonan, had also gathered all the young geniuses who met the requirements. At least one of you has to join the Qin Tian 13 sects. Situ Haonan said loudly as he looked at the 9 young men and women. In the end, his gaze landed on a young man with a cold expression. This young man was his son, Situ Zhao's elder brother, Situ Feng. Situ Haonan's eyes were filled with hope as he looked at Situ Feng. Situ Feng was a martial arts fanatic who was obsessed with cultivation and had no interest in anything else. However, he knew that Situ Feng's comprehension ability was extremely shocking. With his shocking comprehension ability, it was very likely that he would be chosen by the Qin Tian 13 sects and be accepted as a disciple. That was his hope. Once Situ Feng joined the Qin Tian 13 sects, the righteous army would be destroyed with a flip of his hand. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The geniuses of various factions began to gather at Cloud Peak City. Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, Xian Yanjuan, and Dandan also met up with the ancestor of techniques, Tong Sher, and the others. It was worth mentioning that Bubbles, Lu Ming's disciple, Xiang Xiang, and Ouyang Moli also wanted to go and take a look. They said that they wanted to see Lu Ming's glory. Lu Ming also brought them along. After stepping into the transportation array, they arrived at Cloud Peak City a few days later. This was Lu Ming's second time in Cloud Peak City. Cloud Peak City was as lively as usual. On the streets, people came and went, and there were many shops. After arriving at Cloud Peak City, the ancestor of techniques brought them to the Cloud Peak Pavilion to register. It wasn't easy to participate in the Qin Tian 13 sect's disciple recruitment. First, they had to go through the selection process of Cloud Peak City. Only those who were selected by Cloud Peak City would be recommended to participate in the Qin Tian 13 sect's disciple recruitment. Therefore, a large number of people would be selected from the beginning. After 7 days, those who are participating in the selection process will gather at Cloud Peak Plaza, said the person who was registering. Thank you. The ancestor of techniques cupped his fists in gratitude. After signing up, they found an inn to stay in and waited. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. Lu Ming and the others headed towards Yin Peak Square. The Yin Peak Square was vast and could accommodate 1 million people at the same time. At this moment, the surroundings of Yin Peak Square were already packed with people. There were all sorts of races. Lu Ming glanced over and discovered dozens of races. Of course, most of them were here to watch and did not have the qualifications to participate in the selection. Those who participate in the screening enter the square. Those who do not have the qualifications to participate leave the square. Above the square, there was a middle-aged man in battle armor. His skin was golden yellow, and he looked like a bronze statue. This was the Copper Skin race, a small race in the Qin Tian starfield. However, the aura emitted by this burly man was terrifying to the extreme. It pressured many people to the point that they could not breathe. He's much stronger than the Yuan Luo Hallmaster and the Dharma ancestor. Lu Ming's heart stirred. This burly man's cultivation was absolutely at the 6th level True God realm and above. It was even possible that he was a terrifying existence at the 7th level True God realm and above. Many people couldn't help but retreat out of the square. Only a few young people who were participating in the selection walked into the square. Go ahead. Just do your best, the Dharma ancestor reminded. Lu Ming and the rest nodded and stepped into the square. Stepping into the square, Lu Ming immediately noticed a few eyes looking at him. Kong Long, Situ Xiao. Lu Ming looked around and discovered Kong Long and Situ Xiao. At this moment, the two of them were looking at Lu Ming with a sinister expression. Lu Ming smiled faintly and ignored the two of them. As time passed, more and more people gathered in the square. In the chaotic galaxy, forces like the Righteous Sky Army and the Yuan Luo Hall, or forces that were stronger than them, added up to close to 1,000 people. The smaller ones had 5 or 6 people, while the smaller ones had 7 or 8 people participating. Some of the bigger forces had dozens of people. For example, the Yin Peak Pavilion had sent over 200 people to participate. All the forces had sent out more than 50,000 people. The Yin Peak Pavilion Master has arrived. Suddenly a voice sounded. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. The Cloud Peak Pavilion's Pavilion Master was about to descend. He was currently the strongest person in the chaotic astral river. He was also the only heavenly god. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the distance, rays of light flew over and stood in the air above the square. There was a total of 5 people and 4 of them emitted a terrifying aura. Their auras were many times stronger than the burly man from the Copper Skin clan. However, the 4 of them were following behind a beautiful middle-aged woman. This middle-aged woman was a human, and she didn't seem to have any aura. Greetings to the Pavilion Master. However, the burly man from the Copper Skin clan and the other experts of the Yin Peak Pavilion all bowed respectfully to the middle-aged woman. The Yin Peak Pavilion Master is actually a woman. At this moment, many people's hearts jumped and they revealed a surprised expression. For countless years, this is the first time the Qin Tian 13 sects have opened their doors to the chaotic galaxy to recruit disciples. This is a supreme opportunity for all of you. Everyone, you must make good use of it. The Yin Peak Pavilion Master's clear voice rang in everyone's ears. However, all of you must be mentally prepared. The Qin Tian 13 sect's standards for recruiting disciples are shockingly high. Without a certain level of talent, it's impossible to be chosen. Therefore, today there will be a screening. For those who pass the screening, I will recommend you to participate in the later tests of the Qin Tian 13 sects. Speaking until here, the Yin Peak Pavilion Master waved his hand, and a small pagoda flew out. The small pagoda was bronze in color, and the moment it flew out, it rapidly expanded. In the end, it turned into a huge pagoda that floated in the air. It had a total of 81 floors. The screening is simple. You just have to challenge the pagoda. In this pagoda, there will be some puppets on every floor. You will enter the pagoda and challenge it. As long as you pass the 36th floor, you will pass. When you enter the pagoda, a token will appear and follow you. Once you pass the 36th floor, the token will shine and no one will be able to cheat. 10,000 people in a group enter. The Yin Peak Pavilion Master announced. It's just challenging the pagoda. This is simple. Let me go first. A burly young man took the lead and flew into the huge pagoda. Let's go. Me too. Instantly, figures flew into the sky and into the huge pagoda. When 10,000 people entered the huge pagoda's door automatically closed. Everyone waited patiently. When everyone flew into the huge pagoda, they could see that the first floor of the pagoda was shining brightly. However, in just a few breaths' time, the second floor of the huge pagoda was also shining brightly. This meant that someone had already reached the second floor of the huge pagoda. However, very soon the third, fourth, and fifth floors lit up. Lu Ming and the rest did not enter. They wanted to take a look first. Chapter 26-24. So fast. The 20th floor lit up. It's the 21st floor. Many people exclaimed. Clearly, there were some terrifying prodigies in this group who were extremely fast. Half an hour later, suddenly, the space around the tower trembled. Then the figure of a young snake man appeared. A token floated above the young man's head, but this token was dim. Clearly, this young man had been eliminated. He had been sent out without passing the 36th floor. Eliminated. Leave the square. The burly copper-skinned man from before said. The young snake man's face was extremely ugly. He was extremely unwilling. Lord, I was careless just now. Can you give me another chance? The young snake man cried out. He was unwilling to miss such an opportunity. If he could join the Qin Tian 13 sects, he would be able to soar into the sky. Leave the square. I'll say it one last time. The copper-skinned man said coldly. A cold aura emanated from his body. The young snake man shuddered. He didn't dare to stay any longer, and flew out of the square. As soon as he flew out of the square, the token above his head automatically dissipated. Next, people were sent out of the tower. They were all eliminated. Those who were eliminated all had ugly expressions. They knew that they had lost a great opportunity. The Yinfeng Pavilion Master and the others looked on coldly. If they couldn't pass such a selection, even if they participated in the recruitment test of the Qin Tian 13 sects, they had no chance of passing. They would only be a joke. As time passed, more and more people were eliminated. Seeing this, the young men who hadn't entered the tower started to get nervous. However, the light on the giant tower was getting brighter and brighter. It's the 36th floor. Someone has passed the 36th floor. Someone shouted. At this moment, the 36th floor was shining. However, the person who had passed the 36th floor hadn't come out yet. It was obvious that he still wanted to continue. The Yinfeng Pavilion Master didn't say that one had to come out after passing the 36th floor. After passing the 36th floor, one could still continue. The higher the floor, the stronger the person would be, and the more the Yinfeng Pavilion Master would value them. As expected, the 37th floor lit up not long after. However, after the 36th floor lit up, the speed of passing became much slower. Moreover, more and more people were sent out. In the end, nearly 9,000 people were teleported out. All of them had failed the trial. However, soon after, there were also those who were teleported out. The tokens above their heads were glowing brightly, indicating that they had passed the trial. Many people looked at these people enviously. The people who had succeeded all revealed looks of joy. Ha ha ha, this is a disciple of my Yellow Wind sect. He passed the selection. That's a disciple of my Flowing Cloud sect. He passed as well. Outside the square, some people laughed in surprise. They were all experts from various forces. Some people were happy, while others were sad. However, the trial wasn't over yet. It took half a day before the last person was teleported out. This was a young man with a cold and arrogant expression. He had made it to the 46th level and was ranked first in this group. His face was cold and arrogant as he scanned the surroundings, giving off a feeling of being in control of the world. With such talent, there's a high chance that he'll be chosen by the Qin Heavenly 13 sects. Very likely. Around the square, the experts of various forces were all envious. As for the people from that young man's faction, they were all overjoyed. Being ranked first among 10,000 people meant that he had a high chance of being chosen by the Qin Heavenly 13 sects. This was because there were only 50 to 60,000 youths in the chaotic galaxy who had participated in the selection. Out of the 10,000 people in the first batch, 9,000 were eliminated, and only 1,000 or so passed. The elimination rate was 90%. Those who hadn't participated in the trial were extremely nervous. Some of them had even started to sweat. However, Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing and the others were very relaxed. Next batch. The Cloud Peak Pavilion Master ordered. Immediately, another 10,000 people flew into the giant tower. Among them Lu Ming saw Kong Long, Situ Xiao and the others. After the 10,000 people flew into the giant tower closed and everyone waited patiently. The Yuan Luo Palace Master Kong Ji and the Walkabout Sect Master Situ Haonan looked at the giant tower nervously. Their eyes were filled with anticipation and anxiety. This time, it only lasted for 20 minutes before someone was teleported out. After that, more and more people were eliminated. In the end, more than 9,000 people were eliminated. Buzz buzz, another person was teleported out. Among them were Kong Long and Situ Xiao. However, the tokens above their heads shone brightly. It was obvious that they had passed. Their faces were filled with smiles and excitement. When they looked at Lu Ming, their eyes were filled with provocation. Brat, wait until I join the Qin Tian 13 sects. I'll make sure you die without a burial ground. Kong Long couldn't help but send a message to Lu Ming. The corner of Lu Ming's mouth rose, revealing a trace of mockery. He then looked in another direction and ignored Kong Long. Ha ha ha. Outside the square, Kong Ji and Situ Haonan laughed. They were so excited that their mouths cracked. Especially Kong Long and Situ Haonan. They even looked at the ancestor of technique provocatively. However, they were ignored by the ancestor of technique. The ancestor of technique knew the talents of Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, and Xian Yanjuan. Kong Long and the others were nothing compared to them. The trial continued and some people had yet to come out. As time passed, some people had already passed the 45th floor and were heading towards the 46th floor, catching up to the first place of the previous batch. Not long after, the 46th floor lit up. They had already caught up with the best result of the first batch. However, it was obvious that the trial was still ongoing. Then the 47th, 48th, and 49th floors gradually lit up. Amazing! Someone from this group actually managed to pass the 49th floor. Amazing! I wonder which faction's prodigy it is. It's very likely that he was chosen by the Qin Tian 13 sects. Look, it's the 50th floor. In the square, countless people stared at the giant tower and discussed animatedly. Even the Yinfeng Pavilion Master's eyes lit up. Fenger hasn't come out yet. Could it be that Fenger is inside? At this moment, Situ Haonan was excited. That was because his son, Situ Feng, had not come out yet. Almost everyone else had come out. Could it be that Situ Feng was the one who was challenging the tower? Situ Haonan was extremely excited at the thought of that. Look, it's the 51st floor. Someone shouted. Everyone was shocked. That person had actually reached the 51st level. They were all very curious. Who was it that could reach the 51st level? However, the 51st floor was still not the limit. 52nd, 53rd, a day later, the 55th floor lit up. It was almost 10 floors higher than the first place of the previous batch. That was extremely shocking. At this moment, the void around the giant tower trembled, and the figure of a young man appeared. The token above the young man's head shone like a sun. Chapter 26-25. Big Brother. It's my big brother. Situ Xiao cried out in joy when he saw the young man. The young man was Situ Feng. Everyone's eyes were on Situ Feng. They were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Not bad. The Yinfeng Pavilion Master looked at Situ Feng with satisfaction. As the strongest force in the chaotic galaxy, the Yinfeng Pavilion had the right to recommend geniuses to participate in the Qin Tian 13 Sects recruitment test. Moreover, once someone was selected by the 13 Sects, she would be rewarded. Therefore, the more geniuses there were in the chaotic galaxy, the happier she would be. With Situ Feng's talent, there was a high chance that he would be selected by the Qin Tian 13 Sects. He might even be selected by the 3 overlords. It wasn't difficult to become a disciple of one of the 3 overlords, but once he joined, his future would be limitless. The Yinfeng Pavilion Master's eyes were burning. Ha ha ha, it's Fenger. It's my son Situ Feng. It's my son. At this moment, Situ Haonan reacted and laughed in joy. Brother Situ, congratulations. Kong Ji forced a smile on his face and congratulated Situ Haonan. In his heart, he was extremely jealous. With Situ Feng's talent, once he joined the 13 Sects and was selected by one of the big shots, the walkabout sex status would rise. Although he was jealous, he still had to maintain a good relationship with Situ Haonan on the surface. Brother Situ, so that prodigy is your son. Your son's talent is truly shocking. Not bad, not bad. Brother Situ, I'll treat you to a drink next time. You must accept my invitation. Brother Situ. Immediately, the leaders of the big forces around Situ Haonan greeted him with smiles on their faces. It was obvious that they were trying to curry favor with Situ Haonan. What a joke! Situ Feng's talent was too shocking. There was a high chance that he would be selected by the 13 Sects as a disciple. If they didn't curry favor with Situ Haonan now, when would they? Ha ha ha, you're all too polite. He might not be selected by the Qin Tian 13 Sects. It's still not certain. Situ Haonan grinned. Although he had said that Situ Feng might not necessarily be chosen by the 13 Sects, his expression was extremely excited. It was as if he could already see Situ Feng being chosen by the 13 Sects, and even being accepted as a disciple by some big shot of the 13 Sects. His heart was at ease. This Situ Feng actually has such shocking talent. In the crowd, the ancestor of techniques was also shocked. He had heard of Situ Feng's name before. It was rumored that Situ Feng was a martial arts fanatic who was obsessed with cultivation. He did not expect Situ Feng's talent to be so shocking. However, when he thought of Lu Ming, he felt relieved. No matter how great his talent was, how could he compare to Lu Ming? Lu Ming controlled the Tao of the sovereign realm. Once he became a god, he would transform his god force into divine-grade god force. Even in the vast and boundless Qin Tian star field, there were probably only a few who could control divine-grade divine force. Overall, this batch of people was similar to the first batch. About 90% of them were eliminated, and only about 1,000 people succeeded. Among them, there were 2 from the Yuan Luo Palace and 3 from the Freedom Sect. Lu Ming's expression was calm, and he was unmoved. The second batch is finished. The third batch go in. The Cloud Peak Pavilion's Pavilion Master instructed once more. Let's go in. Lu Ming looked at Xian Yanqing and the others. Okay. Xian Yanqing and the others nodded, and then flew into the giant tower. As soon as Lu Ming flew into the giant tower, his surroundings immediately changed. He appeared in a spacious secret room. There was no one around except for him. This was within Lu Ming's expectations. This giant tower was obviously set up with a grand formation. Once one entered, they would most likely be alone. It was impossible to enter with others. A token appeared above Lu Ming's head. At this moment, the secret room lit up and several figures condensed. These figures were all puppets condensed by the grand formation. They charged at Lu Ming. Lu Ming held the long spear in his hand and swept out. shattering these puppets one by one. He had passed the first floor. There was a staircase in the secret room. Lu Ming climbed up the stairs and arrived at the second floor. As expected, more puppets were condensed. Their strength was slightly stronger than the first floor, but it was not difficult for Lu Ming. With a sweep of his spear, the puppets were shattered, and Lu Ming ascended to the third floor. In this manner, Lu Ming continued to advance with an irresistible force. Third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor. Soon Lu Ming arrived at the 30th floor. At this point, the strength of the puppets was quite strong, but it was still not difficult for Lu Ming. At most, his speed would be slightly reduced. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The long spear vibrated and pierced through the puppets, shattering them into pieces. Lu Ming set foot on the 31st floor. Then it was the 32nd floor, the 33rd floor. Soon, Lu Ming reached the 36th floor. When Lu Ming defeated all the puppets on the 36th floor, the token above his head shone brightly. This meant that Lu Ming had passed. Enough. Lu Ming smiled faintly and did not continue. Instead, he walked towards a light door at the side. Lu Ming did not intend to continue. It was enough. As long as he passed, it was enough. There was no need to attract too much attention. His goal was to join the Qin Tian 13 sects. Now it was just a selection. As long as he could pass, it would be fine. Lu Ming stepped into the light gate and was teleported out of the huge pagoda. When Lu Ming came out, a few gazes swept over him. This included Kong Long, Situ Xiao, Kong Ji, and the others. He was teleported out so early. The brightness of his token is not even as high as mine. I guess he just passed the 36th floor. Kong Long sneered. Not bad. I thought he was very talented, but it seems like he is only SOSO. Situ Xiao sneered. As for Kong Ji and Situ Haonan, they were also discussing. I didn't expect this kid from the righteous army to succeed. However, looking at the brightness of his token, it is only SOSO. There is almost no hope for him to join the Qin Tian 13 sects. Kong Ji sneered and deliberately raised his voice to let the technique ancestor hear him. Lu Ming's lips curled up slightly. He was too lazy to care. He was very clear about Lu Ming's talent. If he went all out, he would not have come out so early. It was obvious that Lu Ming did not want to attract too much attention. It was fine as long as he could pass. Lu Ming did not attract the attention of others. Not long after Lu Ming came out, Xian Yinqing, Xian Yinjuan, Dandan, and the others came out one after another. Naturally, they had all passed. However, the brightness of their tokens was about the same as Lu Ming's. Obviously, their thoughts were similar to Lu Ming's. They only wanted to pass. After a period of time, Tong Xie also came out. Tong Xie also passed. The brightness of her token was much brighter than Lu Ming's. She had passed the 40th floor. Chapter 26-26. After a period of time, Lu Ming and the rest of the group also ended their challenge. However, there was no one else as amazing as Situ Feng in this group. The highest they passed was the 45th floor, which was the same as the highest in the first group. Next was the 4th and 5th batches. There were also outstanding geniuses in the last two batches, but there was only one person who passed the 50th floor. No one could surpass Situ Feng. This made Situ Feng the center of attention, and he became the number one genius of the chaotic astral river's younger generation. Situ Haonan and the Walkabout sect were naturally flattered. A group of faction leaders surrounded Situ Haonan and tried to curry favor with him. Situ Haonan's face was full of smiles. My son Situ Feng is such a genius. My Walkabout sect will definitely rise. When my son joins the Qin Heavenly 13 sects, the righteous army will be able to destroy him. Situ Haonan's eyes turned cold as this thought flashed through his mind. After the 5th batch, this round of selections had all come to an end. Those who passed were elated, while those who failed were dispirited. High up in the sky, the Cloud Peak Pavilion's pavilion master waved her hand, and the giant pagoda shrank and was put away by her. All right, the selection is over. A total of 5,050 people passed the selection. The Cloud Peak Pavilion's pavilion master paused for a moment before continuing. However, this is only the selection I set. Don't think that you can participate in the recruitment test of the 13 sects just because you passed. You still need to pass the test of the 13 sects envoys. Only when the envoys think that you pass will you be considered qualified. Understand? Many people's hearts tightened. It turned out that they still needed to pass the test of the envoys of the 13 sects. Otherwise, they would not be considered qualified and might not be able to participate in the recruitment test. Alright, you all go back first. Gather here in 3 days. The envoys will come and personally test you. The Cloud Peak Pavilion Master turned and left. The crowd on the square also dispersed one by one. Lu Ming's group returned to the inn and waited quietly. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. 3 days later, they returned to the square once again. The square was still surrounded by people. However, only Lu Ming and the rest who had successfully passed the previous round could enter the square. Soon all 5,060 people had gathered. They're here. Someone suddenly spoke. Everyone's gaze turned in a certain direction. There were a few people flying over from that direction. One of them was the Yunfeng Pavilion Master. But now the Yunfeng Pavilion Master was not walking at the front. Instead, he was walking behind. He was accompanying an elder in a brocade robe with a smile on his face. The elder in the brocade robe was tall and sturdy. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back and exuded a majestic aura that gave others great pressure. An expert. The elder in the brocade robe was definitely a terrifying expert. He was even more powerful than the pavilion master of Yunfeng Pavilion. There was no doubt that he was a divine realm expert. Everyone did not need to guess to know that this was the envoy sent by the Qin Heaven 13 sects. Envoy Lin, these are the geniuses selected by my chaotic star river. Standing in the sky, the Cloud Peak Pavilion Master introduced the Cloud Peak Pavilion to the old man in the brocade robe with a smile. Even though she was the Yunfeng Pavilion Master, she did not dare to be careless in front of such a person. The brocade-robed old man's gaze swept over Lu Ming's group of 5,060 people. He frowned slightly and said, "These are the heavens' prides of the chaotic galaxy? Too weak." The contempt in his words was self-evident. Too weak. Many people's hearts tightened. They were too weak. These 5,060 people could be said to be the strongest group of people among the younger generation of the chaotic Star River. However, in the eyes of the elder in the brocade robe, they were too weak. In particular, some of the young geniuses were very confident. Now that they were being looked down upon, they felt a little indignant. With such standards, you still want to participate in the assessment of the Qin Heaven 13 sects. Isn't that a little ridiculous? The elder in the brocade robe added. This time, even the Yunfeng Pavilion Master was a little embarrassed. His face was slightly red. Alright, I won't say any more nonsense. If you really want to participate in the assessment of the Qin Heaven 13 sects, you still have to pass through me. Having said that, the elder in the brocade robe waved his hand, and a stone door flew out. As soon as the stone door flew out, it expanded rapidly and became 100 feet tall. With a loud bang, it landed on the square. As long as you can pass through this door, you will pass my assessment. Then, it will be difficult for you to participate in the assessment of the Qin Heaven 13 sects. The elder in the brocade robe said. So simple? Many people were stunned. As long as they could pass through this door, they would pass the elder's assessment. It was definitely not simple. Then many people had the same thought. Their eyes flickered as thoughts ran through their minds. Who will go first? The elder in the brocade robe asked. However, for a moment, no one went forward. Everyone had the same thought. They didn't understand the assessment of this door, and wanted to wait for others to go first. Everyone looked at each other. No one wants to go first? The elder in the brocade robe asked again. A trace of displeasure flashed in his eyes. I'll go first. At this moment Lu Ming spoke and stepped out. It was the same whether he went first or later. He might as well go first. Moreover, Lu Ming was confident that he could pass. If he couldn't pass, no one in the entire chaotic galaxy would be able to pass. Lu Ming stepped out and arrived in front of the stone door. Both inside and outside the square, everyone's eyes were fixed on Lu Ming. It's this kid. Haha, he actually dares to go first. How stupid. I hope he can't pass. Outside the square, Kong Ji sneered. This kid is really stupid. How dare he scout for others? In the square, Kong Long also sneered. Bang. Bang. Lu Ming didn't stop and stepped into the stone door at a constant speed. Buzz. Just as Lu Ming stepped into the stone door glowed and runes appeared. Then several crimson divine lights blasted towards Lu Ming at lightning speed. Swoosh. Swoosh. Lu Ming made his move. His palm was like a knife, constantly slashing out and destroying the red lights. It was effortless and without any difficulty. That is, the elder in the brocade robe widened his eyes when he saw Lu Ming make his move. There was a trace of surprise and doubt in his eyes. What kind of power is that? It looks like the legendary Sovereign Tao, but how is it possible in a mere chaotic galaxy? The elder in the brocade robe whispered. The reason why he didn't fully recognize Lu Ming's Sovereign Tao was because Lu Ming had recently found a way to make some changes to the Sovereign Tao. For example, the color of the Sovereign Tao that Lu Ming was using was dark purple, which wasn't as conspicuous. As long as Lu Ming didn't use his full strength, it wouldn't be fully visible. Lu Ming continued to step forward. The stone door glowed brighter and more lights burst out, bombarding Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming casually waved his hand and destroyed all the divine lights. It's simple. Lu Ming smiled and stepped forward again. This time, more divine lights blasted, but they were easily destroyed by Lu Ming. After this attack, there were no more attacks. Lu Ming stepped through the stone door. Chapter 26-27. Pass. The old man in the brocade robe said. At the same time, many thoughts crossed his mind. This person is special. I must observe him closely. Although he was not certain that Lu Ming had mastered the Tao of Sovereign, the Tao of Sovereign was not to be underestimated. If it was true, it would be a big deal. He passed. Oh, so it's that easy. I thought it would be difficult. It seems like it's easier than the Tower Challenge. It seems like the Yinfeng Pavilion Masters test is stricter. That's right. If that kid can pass, I'll have a piece of cake. Seeing that Lu Ming had passed easily, many people relaxed and smiled. They all thought that the test set by the old man in the brocade robe was very simple. Who's next? The old man in the brocade robe said. Me. Immediately, hundreds of people shouted and rushed toward the stone door. Since the test was so simple, they would of course go up early to show off. One by one, the old man in the brocade robe said coldly. A powerful aura pressed down, causing the hundreds of young people to stop. You first. The old man in the brocade robe pointed at a handsome young man. Haha, me first. The young man laughed and rushed toward the stone door, as if he was going to rush through in one go. Buzz. When he stepped through the stone door, it immediately lit up. A few rays of divine light flew out and blasted toward the young man. The young man looked relaxed. He unleashed his divine power and waved his hand. He wanted to copy Lu Ming and easily defeat the divine light. However, when the young man came in contact with the divine light, his face changed. His face was filled with disbelief. Then he screamed and flew backward. He fell heavily to the ground and vomited blood. His body twitched nonstop. What? Many people were stunned. How could this young man not even be able to withstand the first attack and be sent flying? When Lu Ming passed the test just now, it was very easy for him. What was going on? Many people were dumbfounded. The young man who was sent flying struggled to get up and swallowed a healing pill to stabilize his injuries. Failed. Next. The old man in the brocade robe said coldly. Wait, senior, wait. The young man who had failed yelled. What is it? The embroidered robed old man said. Senior, this isn't fair. I don't think it's fair. When that brat passed through the stone door's attack wasn't that strong. Why did the stone door's attack become so strong when I passed through? The young man cried out in grievance. He could clearly see that Lu Ming was only at the transformation void martial realm, while he was at the second level of the empty god realm. There was no reason why he couldn't pass if Lu Ming could. Impudent. You dare to doubt the emissary? Yinfeng Pavilion Master shouted coldly. The young man immediately broke out in cold sweat. It's fine. The old man raised his hand and stopped the Yinfeng Pavilion master. After that, he scanned the crowd and said, "Let me tell you, my test is absolutely fair. However, I can also tell you that the stone door will be attacked differently depending on the person who enters. The stone door will adjust according to the age of the person who enters, the strength of their divine power, and so on. Only those who are more talented will be able to pass through it. Those who are mediocre will never be able to pass through it. Do you understand? Moreover, the Qin Tian 13 sects have never looked at your cultivation level when recruiting disciples. This is because cultivation level is meaningless to the Qin Tian 13 sects. Even if you are a divine realm expert, you will not be of much use to the Qin Tian 13 sects. The Qin Tian 13 sects recruit disciples based on their talent and potential." The old man in the brocade robe's voice rang in everyone's ears. Indeed, cultivation level was meaningless to the Qin Tian 13 sects. There was no difference between the first level of the empty god realm and the 9th level of the empty god realm in their eyes. What they wanted was talent and potential. However, the handsome young man still had a look of unwillingness on his face. Why could a transformation void martial realm expert pass through while he, a level 2 empty god, could not? It seems like you are still unconvinced. However, do you really think that you can defeat him just because your cultivation level is higher than his? The old man in the brocade robe said flatly. Of course I can defeat him. I only need 3 moves. No, I only need 1 move to defeat him. The handsome young man shouted as he looked at Lu Ming with dissatisfaction. Oh, since that is the case, I will let the 2 of you fight and let you accept your defeat wholeheartedly. Young man, are you willing to fight? The old man in the brocade robe looked at Lu Ming as he spoke. No problem. Lu Ming smiled as he stepped forward and arrived in front of the handsome young man. Young man, I will defeat you in 1 move. I will let everyone know who is qualified to participate in the assessment of the 13 sects. The handsome young man said arrogantly as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He then rushed out and threw out a blow with all his might. A huge palm print was thrown towards Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming's face was calm as he stood there without moving. It was as if he did not see the young man's attack. When the young man's palm energy was close, Lu Ming pointed out a finger. Puff! The finger energy was like a spear as it pierced through the young man's palm print and hit his shoulder. The handsome young man screamed as his shoulder was pierced. The powerful force sent him flying to the edge of the square. He fell heavily on the ground and vomited blood. The square quieted down. 1 move. With just 1 move, Lu Ming defeated the handsome young man. It was just like how he had passed through the stone door earlier. It was effortless. What a powerful genius. Many people were shocked. Lu Ming was only at the transformation void martial realm. It was incredible that he could defeat a level 2 empty god realm expert. After Lu Ming pointed out a finger, he turned around and walked back. A level 2 empty god realm expert with ordinary divine power was no challenge to Lu Ming. What a powerful divine power. If he breaks through to the martial god realm, even if he doesn't have divine grade divine power, he would have at least king grade divine power. I didn't expect the chaotic galaxy to have such a powerful genius. The old man's eyes brightened. Humph. Kong Long, Situ Xiao, and the others harumphed coldly. They were unhappy to see Lu Ming in the limelight. On the other hand, Situ Feng's face was calm. No one could tell what he was thinking. Did you see that? My stone door is absolutely fair. The test will continue. A loss is a loss and a win is a win. If anyone has any doubts, they will be disqualified. The old man announced in an overbearing manner. He had agreed to challenge Lu Ming because he wanted to see how Lu Ming would deal with him. Otherwise, the handsome young man would have been kicked out if he dared to doubt him. The test continued. Another young man stepped forward, but he failed and was sent flying by the stone door. Chapter 26-28. As the number of people taking the test increased, the crowd was shocked to find that the test's difficulty was shockingly high. The elimination rate was shockingly high. Out of 10 people, only 1 would be able to pass. At this time, everyone understood that they had completely underestimated Lu Ming. Lu Ming could pass through the stone door easily. It was not because it was easy to pass through the stone door. It was because Lu Ming was talented and powerful that he could pass through it easily. Situ Feng is making his move. Suddenly someone spoke. Situ Feng calmly walked towards the stone door. A battle sword appeared in his hand. Sword lights burst forth from his sword. Each time, his sword lights pierced through the air. They didn't collide with the divine lights coming from the stone door. However, those divine lights were disappearing one by one. Situ Feng also easily passed the test. Pretty good comprehension. The old man nodded slightly. After Situ Feng, it was Kong Long, Situ Xiao, and the others. Kong Long and Situ Xiao both controlled King Grade Divine Force. Although it wasn't easy, they still passed one by one. However, the other two people from the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect all failed. In this way, only 3 people from the Yuan Luo Hall and the Walkabout sect passed. Soon Dandan, Xian Yanqing, Xian Yanjuan, Tong Xier, and the others also stepped forward. As the World Divine Turtle, Dandan also had shocking potential after ascending to godhood. With King Grade Divine Force, he also passed the test. Needless to say, Xian Yanqing and Xian Yanjuan passed easily. This made the old man's eyes light up. Tong Xier also passed the test, but the rest of the righteous army failed. In this way, including Lu Ming's group, only 5 people from the righteous army passed. This made Kong Ji, Situ Haonan, and the others' expressions turn ugly. The stone door test continued for several days. Finally, all 5,060 people were tested. 500 people. In the end, only 500 people passed the stone door test. The others all failed. This success rate was shockingly low. In the entire chaotic astral river, there were close to 1,000 forces and 50 to 60,000 young geniuses. In the end, only 500 people passed the test. The probability was 1%. Alright, my test is over. The 500 of you can head to the Myriad Spirit Star of the Qin Heavenly Star to participate in the test of the Qin Heavenly 13 Sects. Take this jade token. With that, the elder in the brocade robe waved his hand and 500 jade cards flew out, flying towards Lu Ming and the rest. They reached out their hands and borrowed the jade tablets. Each of them had one. The jade tablet was warm and heavy to the touch. There were many tiny runes on it, and it looked very beautiful. On one side of the jade token, there was a picture of a ruin. The pattern of ruins on the jade tablet is a representation of the chaotic galaxy. Different galaxies have different patterns and symbols. The embroidered robed old man said. Many people smiled bitterly. Indeed, the chaotic galaxy was a ruin in the eyes of many powerful and wealthy galaxies. Now use your own blood to carve your names on the jade medallion. This jade medallion will be bound to you, and only you can use it. Even if others take it, they won't be able to use it. This is the proof of your participation in the Qin Tian 13 Sects test. The embroidered robed old man said. Immediately Lu Ming forced out a drop of blood and wrote, Lu Ming on the jade tablet. After writing, the blood seeped into the jade tablet and disappeared. This jade tablet was completely bound to Lu Ming's aura. Other than Lu Ming, no one else could use it. This was to prevent people from attacking the participants, snatching the jade tablets of others, and impersonating others. In this way, even if one snatched the jade tablet, it would be useless. Alright, the test of the Qin Tian 13 Sects will be held in the Myriad Spirit Star in 3 months. You can go there within 3 months. However, I can tell you in advance. Don't think that you can join the Qin Tian 13 Sects just because you pass my test. It's extremely difficult to join the Qin Tian 13 Sects. It's considered good if 20 of you can join the Qin Tian 13 Sects. After saying that, the embroidered robed old man turned and left. The Yinfeng Pavilion Master and the others accompanied him. It's considered good if 20 of you can join the Qin Tian 13 Sects? Many people were shocked, and their faces turned grave. Everyone left, each with their own thoughts. Let's go. We'll return to the Just Sky Army first. I'll make some arrangements and take you to the Myriad Spirit Star. The ancestor of technique said. Then, everyone returned to the Just Sky Star through the teleportation array. Lu Ming returned to his residence and left some instructions. He also bid farewell to his parents. If he joined a sect to cultivate on the myriad spirit star, he probably wouldn't return in a short period of time. The ancestor of techniques also made arrangements for the Just Sky army. Then he took Lu Ming and the others and set off. Xiang Xiang, Lu Ming, and Ouyang Moli stayed on the Just Sky star. However, Bubbles pestered Lu Ming, wanting to follow Lu Ming. Lu Ming also brought Bubbles along. Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, Xian Yanjuan, Dandan, Bubbles, Tong Shi and the ancestor of techniques. A total of 7 people headed toward the myriad spirit star. The myriad spirit star was located in the center of the Qin-Tian galaxy. It was at least dozens of galaxies away from the chaotic galaxy. It was simply too far. Even if they used the teleportation array, it would still take a long time. They first arrived at Yunfeng City and used the city's super long-distance teleportation array to teleport to the next galaxy. After that, they continued to travel by extremely long-distance teleportation formations. This way, their speed would be much faster. Of course, the consumption of divine crystals was also astonishing. The teleportation array couldn't be made for free. Every time they used it, divine crystals would be consumed. Even so, they still used nearly 2 months to reach the myriad spirit star. At this time, there was less than a month left before the 3-month deadline. What a dense divine qi! Standing on the ground of the myriad spirit star, they took a deep breath and felt the surging divine qi enter their bodies. They felt comfortable all over. The cultivation environment here was much better than that of the chaotic galaxy. The difference was huge. The myriad spirit star was located in the center of the Qin-Tian galaxy. It was the largest trading planet in the Qin-Tian galaxy. This planet didn't belong to a single faction. Countless factions, large and small, traded there. It was extremely prosperous. The Qin-Tian 13 sex recruitment test had always been held on the myriad spirit star. The location was the largest city on the myriad spirit star, the myriad spirit city. After Lu Ming and the others arrived at the myriad spirit city, they found an inn to stay in. As time passed, more and more people came to the myriad spirit city. On the streets, young geniuses could be seen in groups of 3 to 5. Some of their auras were extremely terrifying. At first glance, one could tell that they were extremely powerful geniuses. There were hundreds of galaxies in the Qin heavenly star field. The chaotic astral river was the weakest, the one that no one paid attention to. Any other star river was more prosperous and powerful than the chaotic star river. The number of geniuses in the chaotic star river was also far from what the chaotic star river could compare with. In the chaotic galaxy, only 500 people passed the test and could participate in the test. However, in the other galaxies, even the worst ones had thousands of people who could participate in the test. Some even had tens of thousands of people. Chapter 26-29. Every 1,000 years, the Qin-Tian 13 sects would recruit disciples. It was a grand event in the Qin-Tian star zone. And it was also a day for many geniuses to soar. Soon, there were only 3 days left before the assessment. On this day, the sound of bells rang throughout Wanling City. Let's go. It is the Qin-Tian 13 sect's summons. They should be announcing the rules of the assessment. The ancestor of techniques said. He led Lu Ming and the rest in the direction of the sound of the bells. In the middle of Wanling City, there was a vast open space. This place used to be a huge market. However, during this period of time, the market had been removed and it was used for the assessment. This open space was so big that it could accommodate hundreds of millions of people at the same time without any problems. Soon, the open space was filled with people. Not only were there young geniuses who wanted to take part in the assessment, but there were also many people who wanted to watch the fun. In fact, there were more people who wanted to watch the fun than those who wanted to take part in the assessment. Swoosh! Swoosh! At that moment, a few figures suddenly appeared in the sky and the place quietened down. There are only 3 days left before the assessment. Now, I will explain the details of the assessment and the rules. A majestic man in the sky spoke. The place was silent. Everyone listened quietly, afraid that they would miss any details. All of you should have the identity jade token to take part in the assessment. The middle-aged man took out a jade token. It was almost the same as the one that Lu Ming and the rest had. However, the picture on it was different. 3 days later, when the assessment time is up, as long as you are in Wanling City, no matter where you are, this jade token will bring you to a virtual space. We call it the dream space. In the dreamland space, everything is virtual. Only your spiritual consciousness can enter the dreamland space. Furthermore, in the dreamland space, your cultivation will be suppressed to level 1 empty god realm. If you are already at rank 1 empty god realm, it will not change. If you are not at rank 1 empty god realm, it will not change either. However, although your cultivation is suppressed to level 1 empty god realm, the attributes of your divine force will not change. If you have king grade divine force, it will still be king grade divine force. If you have saint grade divine force, it will still be saint grade divine force. The test is divided into 2 rounds. In the first round, the dreamscape space will be divided into 20 regions. All participants will be evenly divided into 20 regions to fight. However, there is one thing that you can rest assured about. Before you enter the 20 regions to fight, you will enter a special region. There are many incomplete divine skills there. Even if you are a level 1 empty god realm martial artist, you will still be able to cultivate these incomplete divine skills and unleash their power. From now on, you will have 1 year to comprehend the incomplete divine skills. Then you will enter the 20 regions and fight to determine your ranking. This time we have calculated that there will be more than 1 million participants in the entire Qintian star field and hundreds of galaxies. At that time, there will be 50,000 participants in each region. 50,000 people will fight against each other. The rule is that every time you kill someone, you will gain 1 point. At the same time, you will take half of the points from your opponent. Everyone has 2 lives, which means that you will have 2 chances. In the end, the top 100 participants in each region will be able to enter the next round. Those who are not in the top 100 will be eliminated. The middle-aged man explained all the rules in one breath. After he finished, he stopped to allow the participants to digest the information. I see. Lu Ming's heart jumped as he concluded. The test this time was simple. It was divided into 2 rounds. There were about 1 million participants. The identity jade token would bring them into the dream space. In the dream space, even if they were killed, they would not really die. However, their cultivation would be suppressed to rank 1 empty god realm. Of course, those who were below rank 1 empty god realm like Lu Ming would have to keep their identity jade token. Then they would be given a year to comprehend the incomplete divine skill. After that, the 1 million participants would enter the 20 regions. In each region, there would be 50,000 participants. The 50,000 participants would fight against each other to gain points. Only the top 100 participants would be able to enter the next round. Moreover, each participant would have 2 chances. This was for the sake of fairness. This was to prevent the geniuses from encountering powerful opponents at the beginning. If they were killed, it would be a pity. There are more than 1 million participants. Lu Ming was shocked. After a while, when the participants had digested the information, the middle-aged man continued to speak. Those who are eliminated in the first round may have a chance to enter the Qintian 13 sects. As long as you perform well and gain more points, you will have a chance to be selected by the 13 sects. Of course, the better your performance, the more you will be valued. Alright, let's talk about it here. The specific rules will be displayed on your jade tokens later. Take a good look at them. Do you have any questions? After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he scanned the crowd. Senior, I have a question. At this moment, a young man spoke. Speak. The middle-aged man said. Senior, why did you suppress your cultivation to level 1 empty god realm? If I cultivate to level 6 empty god realm, won't I be unable to unleash my full potential? The young man asked. Level 6 empty god realm? Do you think that you are a genius? The middle-aged man asked. The young man did not speak, but his expression showed that he agreed. Cultivation will never represent talent. I can tell you that in the Qin Tian 13 sects, there are a lot of people who have cultivated to level 6 empty god realm within 10,000 years. There are even many true body realm cultivators who have cultivated for less than 10,000 years. Some of them have even reached the heavenly god realm. You are only at level 9 empty god realm. Will the Qin Tian 13 sects lack a level 6 empty god realm cultivator? As long as the Qin Tian 13 sects give an order. How many level 6 empty gods can the Qin Tian star field gather? The middle-aged man's questions left the young man tongue-tied, unable to say a word. There are many ways to raise one's cultivation. There are some treasures, some fortuitous encounters, and some time to cultivate. Therefore, cultivation is useless to the Qin Tian 13 sects. The Qin Tian 13 sects recruit disciples based on talent and potential. There are many ways to raise one's cultivation. Suppressing your cultivation to level 1 empty god realm, and giving you a year's time is to test your talent and comprehension. Only those with high comprehension can join the Qin Tian 13 sects. Do you understand? The middle-aged man said. The young man's face turned red and he did not speak. He came from a big force and had consumed many treasures to reach his current cultivation. However, in the Qin Tian 13 sects, how could they lack treasures? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.